I'm good. No, that's quite all right. Dr. Lee Merritt used to be Dr. Lee Heeb, but she got married. What in the world did you do that for, Lee?
I know. Well, nobody could spell or say he. It was, it was a nightmare going to a restaurant. I told my boys, "You're stuck with it forever." But I thought that I could spell, and that the rest could spell.
All right, Dr. Lee Merritt. You can find out more about Dr. Lee Merritt by going to www.themedicalrebel.org, or is it .com? I forgot.
.com.
.com. Okay, so it's www.themedicalrebel.com. What do you sell on that site, or do you sell anything, or you just give opinion and information?
Most of it's information. I have a big red COVID button that if they have questions about things, and we do have supplements that help keep us afloat. And I also have a very small subscription podcast that we do Monday nights that latest updates on all sorts of stuff and wellness and things. So, but you get discount coupons to buy supplements, so it's like you don't lose them.
So you don't lose that sort of thing. Okay.
No, it helps keep the war fighting going here.
There's going to be a podcast, by the way, at 7:00 Central Time next Monday. Again, a new podcast from Dr. Lee Merritt this coming Monday at 7. It's called Exit the Biomatrix. Now, that may make a lot of sense to you folks there in the medical business, but I'm not catching up with it. What are we talking about here?
Well, you've heard about exiting, the matrix is the whole idea that we live in an illusion, that there's a lot of lies being told, you can move the matrix to find out that everything they see is not real. Well, exiting the biomatrix, I mean, everything we've been told pretty much about our wellness and health and about this hope and about everything we've been seeing recently has been a big lie. I mean, from vitamin D to the vaccine to everything we've been told. I mean, and so at some point we got to kind of break out of it and realize we need to reorient our thinking. And the good news is when we come out of this, we've got some fabulous medicine out there waiting to break through. Some real, I don't mean medicine like pills. I mean, like medical ideas and understanding of the world and how the body works better than we ever did. And I think that's coming out.
You've been outspoken quite a while in opposition to vaccines. What is your main opposition there as far as vaccines are concerned?
Well, it's not a general comment, but the point is with this vaccine, they're giving you trillions of copies of pathogen that gave you the death from COVID. It's an insane project. And first of all, they've never told you what's actually in there. Now, what we're seeing, not only are we seeing the biggest death we've ever had for any vaccine rollout ever. Keep in mind, the H1N1, after 53 deaths, they took it off the market. Now, if you're following along, America's Frontline Doctors, of which I'm a member, they and Tom Rentz filed a lawsuit yesterday, filed suit in Alabama against the Health and Human Services, Tony Fauci, and a bunch of people. And talking about all the details here, but one of the things they had is an affidavit from a whistleblower at the CDC who claimed that there were 11 different, and was willing to do this under oath, that there are 11 different kind of VAERS databases, and just one of them shows over 50,000 deaths. Now, that's not what we, the public, are seeing. I can tell you, I looked at VAERS yesterday, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, which has been in use since 1990. And up until now, we've had 5,380 or something like that deaths in America and in the U.S. and territories. Now, people will hear, I had got somebody emailed me, "Oh, Dr. Merritt, you're not doing the right thing because there are over 10,000 deaths." There are, if you push that button on the VAERS that says you want all areas. The problem with that is that's coming in from maybe Borneo or someplace, but you don't know what the denominator is. It's an unknown population you're dealing with. So I only deal with the U.S. and territories. I know the population there. So whatever you're looking at, you know how many have been vaccinated just roughly, and you know the population. So that's the way to look at it. But even so, over 5,000 deaths is more deaths than the entire sum since the beginning of time, 1990. So this one vaccine program has killed more people, and it's killing people that wouldn't die of COVID. these young people would not die of COVID. Your chance of dying of COVID is like 0.003% if you're under 45, I think is the number. So they're giving this to people that would not normally be at risk. And the other thing is they're giving it to pregnant women. And we've had a lot of miscarriages. This is a horrendous and there seems to be no, let me back up, whereas we had before when they took it off the market. And we've seen this with multiple vaccines. They've taken it off the market for like RSV. There were 22 deaths of babies in the hospital, and they took it off the market. They never could market the dengue fever one because it was too damaging. I mean, with far less damage. So there does not appear to be a threshold at which they're going to stop this. Secondly, this is an emergency use authorization. It's never been tried in humans. I mean, think about this, Mike. This is a big experiment on the world, literally. Who would say, I've got a new drug, and it's great for your blood pressure, but we've never tried it before, but we're going to let everybody, in fact, we're going to mandate that everybody in the world try it. People would just go crazy about that, even though people die of hypertension, okay? That would not be acceptable, but somehow this is acceptable because we've got these public health gurus yelling at us, we should do this for the sake of others. No, it doesn't work that way. And you just can't make this up. So this isn't a global denial of vaccines. But now let me just tell you, and let me just point out too, Nobel laureate Luc Montagnier is quoted in the media saying, everybody that took this vaccine will be dead in 3 years. That's not what he said, by the way. Okay. So I don't know Luc Montagnier, but I know Judy Mikovits. And Judy Mikovits does know Luc Montagnier, and she called his office, and his office assistant said, no, that's not what he said. What he said was, do not go out and get another vaccine, because that is the trigger that could take this down, to take you down if you've had this vaccine.
Now
that
who's
a fatal mistake?
Who's Judy Mikovits, please? Lee, who's Judy Mikovits?
Yeah. Oh, Judy Mikovits, I'm sure your audience knows. She did the movie Plandemic. She's a very famous researcher. She worked with Tony Fauci for a long time. I think she got fired by Fauci. I don't know the whole story, but she worked on she worked on all sorts of stuff with viruses and how they get into your DNA and all this kind of stuff. Her biggest claim to fame is XMRV, and that's what the XMRV is, a retrovirus. It's a murine retrovirus. It came from mouse population essentially, and it's something that's bad for us. It's causing a lot of problems, and it was apparently in some of these vaccines years ago. So she started speaking out about this, and that's what got her fired. Okay. She's taken on. But Judy Mikovits is a well-known person in the fight.
I'm sorry, I didn't know about her, and I consider myself to be more informed than most. But anyway, I don't know if anybody in the Washington bureaucracy knows just how sick and tired the rest of the world is of seeing Anthony Fauci on their television screen. I love when Rand Paul, who's also a doctor and the son of a doctor.
Rand Paul knows.
Yeah. Rand Paul does know, and he tears into Fauci, and Fauci fights back. But Paul seems to win these arguments because Fauci can't prove his arguments. And what has happened, of course, is there is a great demand that we trust the science, and I understand that argument. But are we finding out what science actually knows? Because Dr. Fauci, many times, his answer always seems to be vaccines en masse, but he will admit on occasion that he really doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know what's happening with this coronavirus. He doesn't. But he tells us, he acts as if he does.
And initially, we didn't start out saying it in such a draconian fashion, but basically, he's just lying because we know. And anybody that's been listening on the internet to David Martin's stuff, that he's a guy who does intellectual property underwriting, and he searches patents. He developed in the late 90s a computer algorithm like Google is for searching, like the Google crawler was for searching the internet in general. He made something to search patents, not only for words, but for intent. And that's how he's been following the trends in technology in order to do investments. That's his job, okay? Well, in the process, he's discovered, and I checked his work, like the good teacher, to make sure that the A student still did it right. I checked his work and I looked at the patents that he cites. Every part of the pathogen of COVID, meaning the spike protein or the S1 subunit of the spike protein. So we're dealing with the spike protein, the ACE2 pathway, and what's called the furin cleavage site. Okay, those three things are what makes you sick with this pathogen that we call the spike protein. It's not you don't need the whole virus. All you need is the spike protein to make you sick. And what they showed is that there's nothing novel about this. When Dr. Fauci said this is a novel virus, we don't know what to do with it. I mean, I knew he was lying right away, because if you go back in time, you can see that they knew about chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, treating this stuff, stopping the replication, stopping it from getting into cells and things. They had lots of things that treated these kind of things. They never told you about it. So he was lying from the get-go. But it turns out that this all has been patented. You can't patent natural things. You can only patent things that are created. So what they've done here is they have substituted artificial nucleotides. So your DNA and RNA are made up of nucleotides. These are the little, when you see strings of letters like CG, TU, C, blah, 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 those strings represent a nucleotide. So that's what happened. So they substituted one. They made a synthetic, one of those letters, which would have been U, is now something else. They have made an artificial nucleotide, and they've substituted it in the genome of this pathogen, and that makes the vaccine work, the so-called vaccine of the RNA or DNA, whichever one they're giving you, so they can patent it. Well, it's synthetic RNA and DNA. And this is now being given to you. When you take the virus, or we take the vaccine, you're taking synthetic RNA or DNA. And the problem is that's never been done before. And of course, the DNA can get into your DNA. There's no question about that. The RNA may not be able to, but it is able to, and it still might be able to with certain retroviral enzymes. But what it does is it controls your DNA. And so what is happening here, the other thing we know as well, let me back up. So in addition to making this and having it all be patented, that's how we know Fauci's been lying. I mean, among other things. Everything's told, and there's lies of commission, which is to say this is a novel virus. That's not true. It's an artificially man-made pathogen. But there's lies of omission. In other words, if Fauci really cared about us, why didn't he tell us about vitamin D? Why did he not tell us about other things that we could have done, like quercetin, other things we could have done to protect ourselves from this so-called deadly disease? Thirdly, it's not trivial about these masks. Now, the other thing that Luc Montagnier said that didn't get reported because they censored what he actually said, the lecture that he gave where he said the right things, they took it down. He said, you're in trouble if you take the vaccine and wear a mask. What are they telling us to do? Take the vaccine and wear a mask. Now, why is that? It's because the vaccine is going to, how does this whole thing kill you? Inflammation, ultimately. You're overshooting your inflammatory response to this pathogen. What happens when you wear a mask? You increase your CO2 back up. You increase inflammation in the body. We know that. I mean, I have a friend, and one of the problems is you hear people say, oh, that's nonsense. They don't look at the data. They don't experiment themselves. Like when they first came out with the magnetic stuff, everybody said, oh, that's just hoodoo. That's just conspiracy theory. Well, I took a magnet and a paperclip to people. It's not conspiracy. It's a simple data collection. You can prove this easily. Same thing with the masks, okay? I have a friend who's an internist. She has a CO2 monitor. She put it behind the mask, and she showed that behind the cloth mask, you could get up to multiple thousands, up to 10,000 parts per million. Now, that's not a cloth mask, but 10,000 is in the kind of mask they're asking nurses to wear in the ICU or the COVID wards. That's what we used to call the TB mask, the N95 mask. But cloth ones will go up into the thousands range. And the OSHA says, and the EPA says you should never be over 1,000 or 2,000 for any period of time because they know it's damaging to you. And that's without a vaccine. So for many reasons, they're giving us a program that looks like they're trying to kill us. And God love it. That's what Michael Yeadon, former chief science officer of Pfizer, is saying. That's now, I've been saying this since February, this is a bioweapon, but finally other people are getting on board. Dr. McCullough is now saying this, that this is a deadly program. So there's a lot of reasons to be concerned about this vaccine. And when people say to me, well, what about getting the flu shot next year? Or what about getting the shingles vaccine next year? And I just tell them, even before I heard this about what Luc Montagnier really said, is just don't take a vaccine and understand that you don't want to get sick with anything else with it. That's what the trigger is going to be. I said to people, I'm not just worried about vaccines. Knowing what I know about what the pharmaceutical companies have done to us, I'm worried about my toothpaste. Don't go out and take another anything yet. We don't know how to get you out of this one. So that's where we are. But I do think, by the way, there are things we know to do to protect people now and to try and get them out of the problem if they have vaccine remorse. And I do have that on my site, and I'm going to upgrade it a little bit.
Well,
but for example, here's a simple one. This is one Judy Mikovits taught me. Okay, so she knows about how viruses work in your genome and everything. This, you have a lot of retroviruses, and I can't remember, but it's a pretty high percentage of your genetic makeup is actually virus, retrovirus and things that got into your genome and has been passed down for generations to generations, okay? Well, the problem is it stays quiescent because you have methyl groups, these chemical groups that float around, and you eat your right diet, you maybe take some supplements, and you keep yourself methylated. It keeps those things at bay. It keeps them quiet in your genome. One of the things that they're doing with this thing damps down methylation. Now, there's reasons that they give for doing this, but this new vaccine, the technology, in order for them to get it into your body, they had to do this so that they damped down the body's innate ability to methylate its own DNA, to put this chemical group on the DNA. So now when you take this vaccine, a lot of things are getting expressed in your own genome, including cancer genes. I'm getting calls all the time. I got a call from a big university guy, he's a cardiologist, and he said he's seeing tumors like he's never seen. He usually takes care of the cardiac patients for the oncologist cancer people. He's seeing all these lymphomas, these heart tumors, all this weird stuff. I've had patients that have told me their friends have gotten these high-grade, very malignant tumors in their 40s and 50s, months after they took the vaccine. We're seeing it all over. And I hate to say this is one of the things, this is why you need to take seriously what's involved. And I think people can be protected, but you need to know what to do. And you don't want no more inflammation in the body.
Well, let's follow up on that a little bit. And our guest is Dr. Lee Merritt. She is a libertarian, of course, once ran for governor of the state. And you can find out more about Dr. Merritt by going to www.themedicalrebel.com. What should we do then if we don't take these vaccines? How do we protect ourselves? How do we guarantee our self-protection against the COVID virus?
Well, unfortunately, there's no guarantee, but this is what I would do if it were me. Now, there's two parts to this. One is if you're sick after the vaccine. So if people are having problems, I personally think they need, I would take, if it were me, I would take ivermectin. And you can get this. I give people prescriptions for ivermectin for COVID, and now maybe for this, but the issue here is, it's gotten to be very expensive. They're price gouging it to make it almost unavailable. You can get it offline. I tell you how to do it on my site. And quite frankly, I have some of the stuff from Tractor Supply, the stuff you use for horses. And, it's easy to convert the numbers to figure out how much to take. But there's a whole protocol about how to do this. And that's one of the things. The other things you can take just over the counter that can be very useful. I have a whole list, all the anti-inflammatory supplements like quercetin, silmarillion for your liver. There's a whole bunch of them. But all the things that you would take to protect yourself from COVID will also help with this because this is essentially the pathogen of COVID. And one of the things that is really unique, though, is dimethylglycine or betaine. Betaine is trimethylglycine, dimethylglycine. What that does is it's a methyl donor, so it helps keep your DNA viruses in check. It helps keep this in check. So you want to keep that up all the time. But I have a whole thing. If people push my red button, it's my suggestion based on what I do for myself. So don't consider official medical advice. I can't set up the phone. But the real think that it's helped ourselves a lot by just being smart. And, inflammation we've known for years is a common pathway to tumors, to heart disease, problems with your arteries, etc. And this is just the same thing on steroids. They've devised this to make everybody more inflamed. And what you need to do is make sure this is not the time to be casual about your eating and your health. Eat a good diet. I'm going to do a whole seminar on this, but eat appropriately. Limit the alcohol. Just you have to really take care of your health. Exercise, all the things that decrease inflammation in the body. That's key.
By the way, I went to your website, and we're talking with Dr. Lee Merritt. I went to www.themedicalrebel.com. You have a lot of vitamins, things like zinc there, selenium. What is the are these things? Can these things control what you're talking about? I mean, as far as inflammation.
Well, yeah. So I put that up because we started out. I mean, for years I've had vitamin D in my office. Okay, and I want people to take big doses. The standard, like I say, flat earth medicine, we've been practicing, out-of-date medicine, or we've been lying to people for years, telling them, oh, you don't need this stuff. It just makes expensive urine. The Institute of Medicine says, oh, you only need 400 milligrams of vitamin D. Well, I knew that was wrong because as a spine surgeon, I can see the difference in spine bones. We have a lot of people that get adult rickets, not just osteoporosis, but literally soft bones, bad bones, because they are so deficient in vitamin D. And you cannot get it from the sun unless you live naked on the equator. So you can't get it from the sun. You have to take supplements. And the standard doctor saying 1 to 2,000 is simply not enough. So, for example, for years, I've carried 10,000 international units a day. That's helpful because the Indonesians showed, again, our CDC and NIH didn't do this. All the bright guys in the university didn't tell us this, that if you get your vitamin D up above 30, your chance of dying from COVID goes way down. In the hospital, less than 5%. So 96% of hospitalized patients, those 96% were people with vitamin D levels above 30. But you have to take pretty good doses to get there. And so that's a simple thing. The Indonesians figured it out. Our guys just didn't bother to tell us. But I have that sort of stuff on there, and there's zinc and quercetin, all the things that help COVID. I can't get, right now I don't have DMG or betaine, but I'm going to get some betaine, I think. I think that's probably the easiest one to go. DMG is getting short supply right now because everybody's realizing that's a good thing to take. And that's the other point I'm going to make this. We are about to have a big supply chain collapse. Most, I get there's like Grant's Pharmacy or Grant Pharmacy online. That's just one. I'm not recommending that particular, but that's where I got my ivermectin. That comes from India. And people that worry about overseas drugs, keep in mind, 95% of our drugs have been coming from China. And that pipeline now, I think, is pretty well cut off. So we're stuck, and we're going to have big shortages. So in addition to taking care of yourself this way, it's imperative. If you need specific medicine for your heart, your whatever, you need to stock up, even if it means paying cash right now, because I think we're about to have a shortage. We're starting to have. Did you see where Taco Bell can't make certain things because they're short of their supply?
I didn't. I was completely unaware that most of our drugs were manufactured in China. I'll have to say.
Most people are not aware of that, but that's been true for a long time. They did almost 100% of our antibiotics, and most of them, if not the drug, the precursors to the drug. Right in the middle of this whole thing, in March of last year, when we realized hydroxychloroquine could be very useful. Right. I had a compounding pharmacist that called me and said, I've got 2 kilograms of hydroxychloroquine powder, and he said, so I'm sending it out from for assay. Now, keep in mind, this is in March when the whole world is still going down. And it was fine. But guess where it was from? Wuhan, China. I can't make this up.
By the way, how much vitamin D do you take today?
I take 10,000 a day.
10,000 a day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one tablet of mine. One is, there's different people, and again, this is not, so we have D with K. We used to have the plain D. We can get that, I guess, if people really want it, but the plain D is just 10,000 units in a gel cap. The benefit of the gel cap is vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin, so it's better not to take the dry tablets. And the other part is vitamin K. Ours comes in vitamin K. So it actually directs the calcium. What vitamin D does, in addition to prevent, it should be an absolute great thing for your immune system. It also directs calcium in the body. So it keeps you from losing calcium, helps you absorb it, but it doesn't direct it. So it could go into the arteries and soft tissue. What you want is vitamin K is the thing. There's a vitamin K or MK7, or that names various different things, but a vitamin